It's a plain door in a plain brick wall, nestled among any road in Tallahassee. But what goes on behind those doors is anything but ordinary. It's a lifeline, a life changer for those that walk through those doors. The executive director of Refuge House, Meg Baldwin, knows firsthand just how important safe centers are and the messages shared with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault.
The only time I feel safe.
For most victims of violence and abuse, particularly victims of power-based violence, intimate partner violence, violence against women and children, it's the first person that they tell about what they've experienced and what they fear and what they hope for that makes the biggest difference in that person's life, often for years afterwards. So when a young woman is raped on campus, it's the sorority sister that she tells when she stumbles back where she lives at 3 o'clock in the morning. Often we're the first person that a victim tells the whole story to. And it's in rising to that human occasion that the true heart of our agency lives, of being that safe person that can be relied on to listen, to believe in what the victim is telling her, that really is the lifeline on which that victim's whole life may next be built. And that's what we do here. Many people who work in the field of violence against women and violent trauma are themselves victims, and I'm no exception. I'm a victim of sexual assault. Before Refuge House was founded, domestic violence victims spent the night locked in closets in their own homes with their kids wrapped around them, trying to get through the night with an abuser screaming and throwing things outside, slept in their cars, tried to find refuge with friends and family, and those are the families that we still bring in night after night into Refuge House. And without us being here, those victims would still be trying to find some way of getting through minute to minute with their lives and their spirits intact. When I first took the job as executive director of Refuge House, my mother was still alive. She died not too long after I actually walked through the door. And one of the things that she shared with me has been so meaningful to me for kind of an understanding of what we do here. Because after World War II, she volunteered for the Red Cross and traveled to Germany in June of 1945, just at the end of World War II in Europe. And her job was to set up a displaced persons camp. And in that role, she took care of thousands of people, trying to find a place of safety, a place of security. And she said to me before she died that she was so proud of me because now I was running a refugee camp too. And I've really carried that with me over the now 14 years that I've been the director of Refuge House. You know, the hands that we show on our website are really intended to bring up that feeling of safe, connected touch. Because for so many of the victims that we serve, touch has been hurtful. Touch has been a betrayal. So being able to offer a simple contact of one person to another that comforts is what we hope people come to Refuge House for and what they find here. For victims of rape, so often the way they hear the attacks on them described is, in retrospect, why didn't she see this coming? Sometimes crudely is, why was she wearing that skirt? Why did she have a drink? Why did she get in the car? Why did she say yes to this guy? And yet, from the victim's perspective, she had no reason to anticipate that a person that she was just getting to know, who seemed like fun, who seemed to be interested in her, was suddenly going to attack her. And that's the way that the victims experience that moment when what had been a lighthearted, fun, adventurous time turns into an assault. So many victims describe kind of freezing in place, that moment when life turns in another direction, and the women have to cope with the world suddenly changing right before them. We had a series of videos that were created by Gary Jordan for us over the past several years, all of which had a theme of raising awareness about sexual assault. One series was aimed at college-age victims. We had another campaign that was focused on incest, intrafamilial sexual assault, and another that was aimed at male survivors of sexual assault who are often overlooked and misunderstood as victims. What I'm really excited to let everybody know is from the time we opened the Safe Center in 2016, and those 3 awareness campaigns were brought to the community, the number of rape survivors coming forward for services has doubled in just 3 years. So it tells us how powerful it is for victims to see themselves represented. Years ago when I was in law school in Minneapolis, I was working on some advocacy campaigns there locally, and it was really the beginning of my working on behalf of women in prostitution. For whatever reason, the women in the community who were involved in prostitution found it easy to talk to me. So I kind of became the go-to advocate for that group of women. And at one point, that role kind of galvanized. I was in a community meeting and there were a number of prostitution survivors kind of around me. And one of the women turned to me and said, "You know, somehow it feels like you get what we're saying. Do you think you can help us?" And I guess for 30 years, my aim is to be able to turn back to that woman and say, yes, I think I can. So I hope that I can look back on my career and my advocacy work to be able to say, yes, I did help.
You do an amazing job. Thank you so much, Refuge House.